Hello, it's Julian, and in this video I'm going to give you my theory on what's going on in Myanmar, particularly in regards to the Rohingya crisis. Hopefully you will learn something from it, or at least get some sort of different perspective on this crisis, especially if you are from Myanmar or you have something to do with Myanmar.
Hi.
Hello.
What are you doing?
I am making some dinner, some gorgonzola spaghetti. I only use authentic ingredients. So I got the gorgonzola from Italy, got some spinach, got some fine Italian spaghetti, and I just toasted some walnuts. I'll show you. It's good flavoring.
Tastes how? Like, is it nice?
Very creamy. Slightly piquant, meaning slightly spicy.
Ah, great. And you cook with suit?
Oh, my suit?
Yeah.
Well, let me explain. I have my own suit brand, so you know, it's every opportunity I get to showcase my suit, I take. So cooking is no exception. The flavor of the pasta, if it cooks in the sauce, can become very stodgy.
Stodgy.
Yeah.癖がついちゃう.
Heat means like fry, you know?
Yeah, like frying it in the pan. And all the restaurants do that.
Really?
Yeah. And it becomes, well, it's like, starts tasting like a potato. There you are.
Thank you.
Let's do cheers.
Cheers.
I like this brand of wine. It's from Azerbaijan. And this is a port wine. Very sweet.
Very sweet.
So let's eat.
Okay. So you're going to talk about Myanmar today, right?
Yeah. Well, you can just ask me what you want to ask me about Myanmar. So, you been there?
No, I've never.
You want to go there?
I'm quite interested, but not sure. Like, I've never thought to visit there, like, you know, to do it.
Right.
But if I had a chance, I'd love to. So, when was the first time you visited Myanmar?
2014. I think it was a very early democracy for Myanmar, and the country's figurehead, Aung San Suu Kyi, was basically campaigning for the NLD, the National League for Democracy, I think.
So before that, like, what was going on in Myanmar? Like,
yeah,
easy history. I'd love to hear
well,
that.
after World War II, well, actually, let's start before World War II. It was a part of the British Raj, so the British India, basically. And Myanmar was like the easternmost outpost of the British Empire on the subcontinent. And, well, World War II started, and the Bamar people, which is the majority of the population in Myanmar, that's why it used to be called Burma, the Bamar people, led by General Aung San, Bojok Aung San, that's the Burmese for captain or general, called the Japanese, or maybe the Japanese called him, and then he went and trained in Japan how to fight against the British, and then they tried to kick the British out of Myanmar. However, they found that the Japanese rule in Myanmar after the British left was even worse. So yeah, so it was much worse. So Aung San famously said, if the British sucked our blood, the Japanese crushed our bones.
Okay.
So it was a terrible time for Myanmar. So by the way, it was good.
It was so nice. I love this. This is so tasty. And I love this wine as well.
Yeah. So basically, after World War II, it became a military government led by General Aung San, and his daughter Aung San Suu Kyi married a British man, and she campaigned for democracy, but the army wanted to kind of keep it under military control. So Aung San Suu Kyi was the daughter Aung San Suu Kyi. She was locked in her home for, I don't know, maybe about 30 years or something. House arrest. Her whole family, her 2 children and her husband, grew up without her, basically. So she sacrificed a lot for the country. And in 2014, I think, it was they had the elections, and the country's opening up. It's changing very rapidly, and it's been in the news. It's been in the news for what's happening in Rakhine State, which is where the Rohingya people were kind of pushed out of the country to Bangladesh.
Okay, so 2014 was like very changing time for them.
Yeah, it's changing a lot every day. The country is in a state of kind of chaos, I think, a little bit.
And you visit there at that time.
You know, but it's safe. It's safe. But if you go to certain areas, it's there's war going on, basically. It's funny because the country has about 130 different people, different ethnicities, right? So in the north you have the Kachin, you have the Chin people; in the west, the Rakhine people, Karen people, Wa people, Shan people. There's just so many, right? Whereas in Japan you have like basically 1 or maybe 3. You know, Okinawa people, Ainu people, and Yamato people. So the dynamic is very different to Japan. You have a situation with many different people fighting for different parts of the country, and also the country is very rich in resources. So it has a lot of oil off the coast, the western coast, and also the central part of Myanmar. It has teak wood, which is a very highly prized material for furniture,
Mm-hmm.
and also what do you call it? Jade or ruby trade. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've got a lot of precious stones. In the north and in the east, you have the Golden Triangle, which is where most of the drugs are produced in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a lot of different people fighting for different parts of the country,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the situation it has been in. And as the country transitions from that to democracy, there's going to be some casualties, right?
Okay. So how was that? Like you visited there, and what did you feel, or like what did you say? Or,
Well, the thing is, right, Myanmar's been in the international spotlight for, I think since last year, 2018, early last year, or maybe before that, 2017, when the army, the Tatmadaw, made a big offensive against the Rohingya and started, the BBC News took it up. You know, these refugees, they were traveling across the border, setting up camps, people getting killed, losing their families and things like that. While all this was going on, I spoke to local people and to see what their views were. And it seemed to me that everybody I spoke to had this same opinion that these people, the Rohingya people, basically visitors from Bangladesh, and that they need to kind of go back to their country. That was like a unanimous thought, I would say, pattern in most people. It wasn't like this in 2014, I don't think, when I was speaking to people, but since the Rohingya crisis became internationalized with the media, people were, they were defending what they think is their country, right? They think that this Rohingyas are basically sort of invading, right, Myanmar.
What's the fact? Like they came from Bangladesh? Rohingyas.
What's the question?
Is that true? That they came from Bangladesh? Or no?
I cannot say. Who knows? The Rohingya people, they say they've been there for many, many centuries. Rakhine people say that they came, I don't know, like a few decades ago. Some people say they're complete, outsiders. What's the truth? We don't know the truth. Everybody believes in their own version of the truth, which is actually a dangerous situation when the facts are so blurred. And this is the situation in Myanmar right now. And it's not my position to say because I don't know where these people came from. I mean, it's all just one big jungle anyway, that place.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the situation right now.
So, what do you think? What's going on in about Rohingya or in Myanmar right now, like politically?
It's a good question. My opinion is based on trying to understand the situation and what the country is trying to achieve right now. Now, as I mentioned before, there's all of these different ethnicities all fighting over different resources. Now, these ethnicities, they have their own armies. So when I traveled from Myanmar in the south to Thailand, they had army checkpoints, but not for the Myanmar army, for the Karen State Army. Right, so each area has its own army. It's a pretty crazy situation. And whilst this is all going on, the international media has focused on the Rohingya crisis and has tried to tell Myanmar and put pressure on Aung San Suu Kyi, who's a very, very important person in the country. everybody loves her. And they've sort of demonized her for not standing up for the Rohingya. This has multiple effects on what's going on in the country. First of all, I think is the most important here is that it creates a sense of shared unity and shared destiny among the various ethnic tribes of Myanmar. So even if you're a Mon person or a Chin person, you would look at this situation and think that the international media is looking at them as if they're the bad guys, right? Now, remember that this is a country with very, everyone's fighting against each other, right? And then when you have one thing that people agree on, and then they think that we are Burmese, or we are Myanmar people, we don't want Rohingya in our country, then that brings them together, right? Which is a very, very important part of democracy. And I don't think it's an accident that this is happening. And I think that the Rohingya people, I'm not going to talk about where they came from, I don't know, but I would say that this is an example of how an entire people can be used as a pawn in a bigger game. Pawn is like a stegoma, right? So I think that they've been scapegoated as part of a wider agenda to make Myanmar a country, a proper country. And I think that they're the victims of this, right? Look, Myanmar people, they're very, very nice people, right? I have many friends from the country. They'll probably watch this video, and I've talked to them about my views, and I have nothing against them at all. But I do think that there is a sense that they're being manipulated, right? That a lot of people they don't realize the kind of the wider games, the bigger game that's going on, and they think that the international media is kind of like attacking us. The tourists are not coming to Myanmar anymore. Companies are not investing in the country anymore because of this whole Rohingya thing. But then they start to. The next step would be to let's try to work together. That's the thing. If you have a common, if everyone is looking at you as an enemy, to point at Myanmar people and say that they're the enemy, it brings them together. So it solves a lot of the problems that Myanmar has had in history with the various ethnicities. So I think that this is part of the steps of a new country forming, a new democracy forming.
So Rohingya is the kind of sacrifice to
I think so. Ultimately, you have to think who benefits, right? Now, I mentioned that the military have governed the country for since the end of World War II. And they have a lot of enemies, right? So they've been fighting with the various smaller armies of the different ethnicities. And so they have a lot of... And as you move into a democratic society, you need to get votes. You need to be somewhat popular. And if everyone is like against the army, the Tatmadaw, then that's not good for the Tatmadaw going into democracy, obviously. Even though it's like they are guaranteed a number of seats in the parliament, it's still not good. But if people think that the Tatmadaw are protecting Myanmar from Rohingya, they're protecting them from international condemnation, then that's one way that they can get votes. They can turn around and say, hey, we've been protecting you guys, right? In spite of the differences between the different races. I think that the Tatmadaw benefits from this whole Rohingya play.
So Tatmadaw is a army.
Yes.
And Aung San Suu Kyi is just democratic.
Yeah, she's the sort of the figurehead of the country. She's the woman who sacrificed her whole life, her family.
Yeah.
Well, not her family, but her time with her family for the country. So yeah, a lot of people respect her. But you know, the BBC News, they want to kind of put pressure on her. The Nobel Peace Prize, they're talking about taking that away from her.
Yeah.
And you know, that pisses off Myanmar people, right? It doesn't matter if you're, you know, catching people or carrying people, it pisses you off, right? And that is the first step to creating one idea of being a Myanmar person, right?
So what do you think, like, how's the future going to be? What do you think about it?
Well, I hope it's going to be bright, but it's a difficult question. Companies are investing, but they're also not sure, right, which way the country is going. It's very unstable politically. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the way it's going, they're gonna create this unified identity. The next generation of Myanmar people will be more kind of united, I think, especially growing up in this environment. So that's going to have an impact. Could become a very successful country. The people are working, they're very hard-working, very respectful, I think honest. Out of the Southeast Asian countries, I'd say that the people of Myanmar work extremely hard. And they're actually very similar to Japanese people, I think. The important thing for them, though, if I was to say anything to them, Myanmar people, young people, is to don't be manipulated, right? There are games being played, right? People trying to design the country, and have to think for yourself, right? The whole problem, if you say that I belong to this group of people, then you're gonna kind of shoulder the problems of those people as well. I mean, that's the whole, it comes down to collectivism versus individualism. If you're part of a collective, you don't really have to think. You just go along with whatever that collective is doing, right? But if you start thinking for yourself, then I think you start making the right decisions for yourself, right? It's not always in the best interest to do something for your community or your chosen kind of, not your chosen, but your ethnicity, something. Yeah.
So is there much less Rohingya people like in the country right now? Like most of the people keep pushed out from Myanmar, right?
Yeah,
So
There's still Rohingya in Myanmar, but I think
really?
maybe nearly 1 million people, they say, have been displaced. But nobody really knows. I don't really think so. Like, but it's not. I don't think that's important. I think it's more important to understand who's controlling what, right?
Yeah.
What the agenda is, who's benefiting. And I do think that the army are benefiting from what's going on a lot.
Aung San Suu Kyi is against the army.
She's been fighting against the army for her whole life.
So she wants to change this.
Well, no one's really sure what she wants to do. She hasn't really spoken about the Rohingya thing. Well, although people respect that this is a very sensitive time for the country, and as it transitions from military government to democracy, if she loses popularity within the country, her NLD party is going to be in disorder, and the democracy could be threatened. Right? This idea of creating this new country, and so I think that may be a reason why she's not commented on this Rohingya issue, while the international community is firmly attacking Myanmar. And I think tourists that go to Myanmar, or they decide to cancel their trip because of Rohingya, doesn't help anyone, and they're not really. I don't think they really understand what's going on. If they go to some tourist area like Bagan or Yangon or something, I mean that has like almost no effect on what's going on in Rakhine state. So you're just making like local people suffer by not going there and spending your money there.
Because I remember that a few years ago I saw so many news about Rohingyas, but I forgot about it because these days I don't see any news. Because I'm not reading so much. But is that still big news?
In Myanmar?
Not in Myanmar, but
in the world?
Yeah, in the world.
Not as much as it was 6-7 months ago.
Yeah. But in Myanmar, it's so big problem, big news.
Yeah, because people, they feel like, the international community is against them. So, I mean, it doesn't make anyone happy, that's for sure. It just kind of motivates them to behave in a certain way. Motivates them to kind of be friendly with, not be friendly, but to have this mentality, it's us against the world. Right, that's a very powerful idea. And this Rohingya crisis just builds that, The same thing is happening in the Muslim world, right? You have the Palestinians, right, being kind of persecuted by the Israelis, and then Muslims, they kind of they gather around and say, oh, okay, look, the West is against us, and then you have all this terrorism in Europe. Of course, I'm oversimplifying it, but for a lot of Muslims, I think they feel they're being victimized against. It's part of this whole collective thinking. Right, your problem is my problem. Right, we stand together. That's okay, but that can be manipulated.
So did you feel the difference between you visited Myanmar this year and in 5 years ago as well, the first time? Did you feel this difference in 5 years?
Well, as I said, I think the biggest difference is the internet, right? The Myanmar people did not have internet before that. Now they have SIM cards, they have access to 3G, 4G, and they get their news from Facebook, social media. A lot of it, they say, is like fake news, or a lot of the kind of information vilifying Myanmar people, or trying to say that the Rohingya are the victims. They say that that's fake news. I see this a lot. To be honest, I don't know. Right, I haven't seen it. BBC, they collect footage. They say that that's fake news. And to be honest, I hate the BBC. So I don't believe that they are partial at all. They have an agenda. Right, we see the BBC trying to do like similar things to Japan, right? With the whole kind of Me Too movement, with Ito Shiori, and just trying to use that to kind of get Japan to become more liberal. I mean, this is like, it's outrageous, to be honest. But yeah, the BBC, they do that. So we don't really know who to trust, right? And in that situation, it's better to just try to protect yourself from being manipulated by not trusting anything. Don't believe anything,
So you don't believe anything? Like what?
Not really, no. There's so much shit out there. Now you go to the BBC website, right? And you look at what they have, what news stories they're running. There is always one article about LGBT issues. Right? It's like a quota that they have to fill. Does that make it a partial news outlet? I don't think so. Right? If there's no news happening, then you could have 2 or 3 articles about some LGBT issue, right? And so that you have to ask what stories get into the news, right? They decide that, so they curate the news. And it so happens that at the time they were picking up on this whole Rohingya thing, created an international crisis. But maybe the BBC are being manipulated as well. So I don't know. I don't know who to trust. So the most important thing is to be skeptical. Don't believe anything. Don't believe the BBC. Don't believe what you see on Facebook. Just try to make your own decisions. Think is most important. Think about who benefits. That's very important, right?
Are you planning to visit there again?
Yeah.
Soon.
I have friends there now. It's the Haiso friends. Haiso, you know what Haiso is?
Yeah, high society, yeah.
Yeah. So I have friends in the Haiso, so it doesn't matter that they're Haiso. I could care less if they're homeless or Haiso, but I'm going to maintain my friendship with them. I've been studying the language a little bit, can communicate somewhat. I enjoy that.
Okay, so could you tell me the summary of this, like, of all conversation this time?
My theory about the Rohingya crisis in 2017, 18, 19. Yeah, my theory is quite simple. It's that the Rohingya are a scapegoat for the new Myanmar identity. The Rohingya crisis, it gives democratic support for the Tatmadaw since they are seen to be doing the job of protecting the country from the outside, in spite of the transgressions with the various ethnicities, Karen people, Shan people, all these people, right? Another point, second point, is that I didn't talk about this earlier, but this whole Rohingya crisis, it creates this climate of fear that Muslims will overrun Myanmar. I don't think that this is a realistic threat, but it creates, again, a sort of shared sense of urgency, right? The people are scared about this, right? Doesn't matter which ethnic group you belong to. So it creates that sort of atmosphere. And finally, there's this Rohingya scapegoat thing. It's contributed to the international condemnation of Myanmar, and not just the country, but also Aung San Suu Kyi. And what that does is it gives the identity of us versus the world, right? And that strengthens the unity of the country as it transitions from a divided military government, a divided country with a military government, to a democracy. So it fits nicely into this whole narrative, I think, my theory. And basically, I think if you ask Myanmar people, do you think that you need to protect the country? I think they would say, yeah, we need to protect the country. And the party that protects the country is the Tatmadaw. And so I think that they're the prime beneficiaries of this whole Rohingya crisis. And the Rohingya are scapegoats, and ultimately the victims of this manipulation are probably average Myanmar people who will continue to tolerate the behavior of the Tatmadaw. Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm. It's so complicated, like, but when I think about the beneficiary and the thing, it seems like it's quite simple.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Things don't happen from an accident. You know, the timing of this mass kind of ethnic cleansing. You know, I don't want to use ethnic cleansing. I'll just say it. Getting rid of this Rohingya people from Myanmar. It kind of, the timing is sort of perfect. You know, that makes me think that it's because the country is transitioning into a democracy. You need an enemy, right?
Yeah.
It's just like a play, a story, you know. They're the bad guys, this is the good guy, this is the policeman, we're under attack. But, you know, my favourite activity in Myanmar is just cycling through the, you know, small villages, Irrawaddy division, around, not Mandalay, I like Lower Burma, Mawlamyine. It's a beautiful country, and can't wait to go there again, if I can still go.
Okay, thank you so much. It was so interesting, and I learned so many things today. Okay.
My pleasure.